The warning lights started flashing red across the entire monitoring station. Something was coming toward them through deep space, and it was moving faster than anything Commander Rax Thor had seen in his 30 years of military service. He leaned forward in his command chair, his sensory stalks extending fully to take in all the displays at once. "Get me everything," he ordered his crew. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know what that thing is." The Velthani Empire controlled this entire sector of space. Their technology was among the most advanced in the known galaxy. Their ships were beautiful works of art, grown from living biotechnology rather than built in factories. They had sensors that could detect a single ship from 3-star systems away. Yet somehow this unknown vessel had appeared almost out of nowhere. The tactical officer's hands moved rapidly across his console, pulling up data streams. "Commander, the readings they don't make sense, sir." "Explain," Rax Thor demanded. "The vessel's power output is fluctuating wildly. One moment it's reading levels that should cause an immediate reactor meltdown. The next moment, it drops so low the ship should be dead in space. But it just keeps coming, maintaining steady acceleration." The science officer added more troubling information. "Sir, the hull composition is bizarre. Its reading is iron-based alloys. That's what primitive species used thousands of years ago. But there's something else mixed in, materials our computers have never encountered before. The database has no reference points." Rax Thor felt a chill run through his body. Unknown materials meant unknown technology. Unknown technology meant potential danger. He was about to order the fleet to battle stations when another officer spoke up. "Commander, it's broadcasting something. Audio patterns across all frequencies. It sounds like music?" "Music?" Rax Thor repeated, confused. "Who broadcasts music while approaching a military installation?" The main view screen switched to a visual of the approaching vessel, and several members of the bridge crew made sounds of disbelief. The ship looked like something that belonged in a museum, or more accurately, a junkyard. Its hull was covered in rough welds where metal plates had been joined together by hand. The plating itself didn't match. Different colors, different textures, as if the ship had been repaired with whatever materials were available. Nearly a third of the vessel's surface was covered with what appeared to be emergency patches. "That thing flies?" the tactical officer asked in amazement. "Apparently," Rax Thor muttered. The Velthani built their ships to be elegant, efficient, and beautiful. This vessel looked like someone had taken scrap metal and forced it into the shape of a spaceship through sheer stubbornness. "Sir, should I deploy the fleet?" the tactical officer asked. Rax Thor thought for a moment. 5 Velthani warships were already in position around the station. Each one was more than capable of destroying a single vessel, especially one that looked this primitive. "Deploy them, but hold weapons. Let's see if they respond to communication first." The fleet moved into an intercept pattern, their elegant bioships gliding through space like predatory fish. Weapon systems locked onto the strange vessel. Surely whoever was piloting that wreck would see they were outmatched and either flee or surrender. "Open a channel," Rax Thor ordered. "Let's find out who they are and what they want." The communication officer worked his console, sending out a standard hailing frequency. For a moment there was silence. Then the main view screen flickered and changed. Rax Thor found himself staring at something he'd never seen before. A bipedal creature sat in what appeared to be a command chair. It had pale, pinkish skin without scales or protective plating. Its head was covered with short brown fur. No hair, their database corrected. But the most unsettling feature was its eyes. They faced forward, both looking in the same direction. Predator eyes. Hunter eyes. Then the creature opened its mouth and Rax Thor saw rows of white teeth. Too many teeth. The creature's mouth split wide, showing those teeth in what their cultural database identified as a smile, though it looked more like a threat display to Rax Thor. "Howdy there," the creature said, its voice warm and friendly. "This is Captain Jake Mitchell of the United Nations Starship Relentless. That's quite a beautiful sector you've got here. Really nice work with those nebula formations. Mind if we pass through?" Rax Thor's sensory stalks twitched in complete confusion. The creature, the human, if their database was correct, was acting like they'd just met at a social gathering. He seemed completely relaxed, leaning back in his chair with one leg crossed over the other. Behind him, Rax Thor could see other humans moving around what appeared to be their bridge. They were all going about their tasks calmly, as if 5 warships pointing weapons at them was completely normal. "This is Commander Rax Thor of the Velthani Empire," he responded carefully. "You have entered our territorial space without authorization. Identify your species and state your intentions." Captain Mitchell's smile somehow got even wider. My apologies, Commander. We're human from a planet called Earth. We're explorers just passing through this region mapping new territories. We didn't realize this sector was claimed. If we'd known, we would have requested permission first. Our bad. Explorers? Raxthor repeated slowly. He glanced at his tactical officer, who was staring at his displays with growing concern. Sir, the tactical officer whispered urgently. They still haven't powered up any defensive systems. Their shields aren't even active. Either they're completely unarmed or they don't think they need defenses, Raxthor finished grimly. That was far more worrying. Species that didn't raise shields when faced with superior firepower either had nothing worth protecting, or they were so confident in their abilities that shields seemed unnecessary. He looked back at the human captain, trying to read the alien's expression. That strange smile remained fixed on his face, but the eyes, those predator eyes, were sharp and alert. They were taking in everything, noting the positions of the Velthani ships, calculating, measuring. Captain Mitchell, Raxthor said, you are aware that my ships have locked weapons on your vessel? Oh sure, Mitchell replied casually. Your tactical systems are pretty loud. We picked up the targeting locks about 2 minutes ago. Nice response time, by the way. Your crews are well trained. The human was complimenting them while having weapons pointed at his ship. Either he was the bravest creature Raxthor had ever met, or the most foolish. The commander couldn't decide which option worried him more. Commander Raxthor watched the human vessel through the observation window, trying to make sense of what his sensors were telling him. Down in the technical analysis lab, Lieutenant Kexlan was practically pulling out his sensory stalks in frustration. Run the diagnostics again, Kexlan ordered his team for the third time. These readings have to be wrong. But they weren't wrong. Every scan came back with the same impossible data. The young science officer took a deep breath and opened a direct line to the command bridge. Commander, we need to talk about this ship. Right now. Raxthor heard the tension in Kexlan's voice. In all their years serving together, he'd never heard the usually calm scientist sound so disturbed. Report. Sir, that human vessel should not be flying. It shouldn't even be in one piece. The reactor they're using is outputting power levels that fluctuate so wildly, it should have exploded the moment they turned it on. We're talking about energy spikes that would tear apart any normal ship from the inside out. Raxthor leaned forward. Yet it's still functioning. That's just it, sir. Not only is it functioning, but it's maintaining steady acceleration. Whatever containment system they're using for that reactor, it's something we've never seen before. And the power output itself doesn't match any known energy signature in our databases. Another officer chimed in from the weapons analysis station. Commander, we've finished analyzing their armament. It's primitive. They're using kinetic weapons. Metal projectiles accelerated by magnetic fields. No plasma cannons, no particle beams, no quantum disruptors. Just chunks of metal being thrown at high speeds. Kinetic weapons? Raxthor repeated in disbelief. Species stopped using those technology centuries ago. They're inefficient and require too much raw material. Yes, sir. But here's what's strange. Their weapons are positioned all over the hull. We count at least 40 separate launch tubes, all hidden under panels that our sensors barely detected. And the targeting systems appear to be partially manual. They have actual crew members operating some of these weapons. Tactical Officer Vren that's pulled up a holographic display of the human ship, highlighting its armor. Sir, look at this hull plating. It's absurdly thick. We're measuring at least 6 inches of bonded metal in some places. That's nearly 3 times what we use on our heaviest battleships. But they don't have any energy shielding at all. No deflector screens, no phase barriers, nothing. That makes no sense, Raxthor said. Without shields, even a glancing hit would damage their hull. Maybe that's the point, Kexlan suggested quietly. Maybe they expect to take hits. That armor isn't designed to deflect damage, it's designed to absorb it. Look at all those repair patches on the exterior. This ship has seen combat, Commander. A lot of it. Raxthor was processing this information when a sharp alarm pierced the air. Everyone on the bridge froze. That sound meant only one thing: weapons discharge. Who fired? Raxthor roared. I gave no such order. At the junior tactical station, a young officer named Preltok was staring at his console in horror, his skin flushing with embarrassment and fear. Sir, I was running a targeting calibration. I didn't realize the safety protocols were. Sir, I accidentally fired a ranging shot. Everyone turned to the view screen in time to see a low-powered plasma bolt streak across space and strike the Relentless directly on its side. The bolt was designed for distance measurement, not damage, but it still carried enough energy to punch through most civilian hulls. The bridge crew held their collective breath, waiting for the explosion, the hull breach, the venting atmosphere. The humans would be furious. They might retaliate. This could start a war. The plasma bolt hit the relentless hull and scorched it black. That was all. The ship didn't even slow down. Impossible, Vrenets whispered. That should have at least caused a hull breach. Before anyone could respond, the communication channel crackled to life. Captain Mitchell's face appeared on screen, and that unsettling smile was somehow even wider than before. His eyes twinkled with what looked like amusement. "Well now," Mitchell said cheerfully. "That was a nice shot there, fellas. Got our attention real good." "Our turn?" Raxthor felt his blood turn to ice. The human was asking permission to return fire. One human ship against 5 Velthani warships. Either Mitchell was insane or... "Captain Mitchell," Raxthor said quickly, his words tumbling out. "Please accept my deepest apologies. That was an accidental weapons discharge by an inexperienced officer. We meant absolutely no hostility. It was a terrible mistake." There was a pause. Then Mitchell laughed. It was a strange sound, a series of short barks that somehow conveyed genuine amusement rather than mockery. Behind him, other humans on their bridge were also making that sound. "No harm done, Commander," Mitchell said, waving a hand dismissively. "Accidents happen. We've all been there. Besides, we've got about 6 inches of bonded titanium steel composite over our critical systems. Takes more than a love tap to get through that stuff." 6 inches. He just confirmed what their sensors were reading. That was an insane amount of armor. Mitchell leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious but still friendly. "Look, Commander, how about we start this whole first contact thing over? We're explorers, not conquerors. We're not here to fight or cause trouble. What do you say we dock with your station and have some proper diplomatic talks? Share some information, maybe some food and drinks? Get to know each other like civilized folks." Every instinct Raxthor had developed over 30 years of military service was screaming at him to refuse. To order this human ship away from their territory and never look back. This vessel was wrong, its crew was too calm, and nothing about this situation made sense. But another part of him, the part that had risen through the ranks by being curious rather than just cautious, wanted to know more. What kind of species built ships like this? What kind of people smiled and joked after being shot at? "Very well, Captain Mitchell," Raxthor heard himself say. "You may approach and dock. We'll arrange diplomatic quarters for you and your crew." "Much obliged, Commander," Mitchell replied with a nod. "We'll see you shortly." As the Relentless began its approach to the station, the sensor operators worked frantically to get better readings of the ship's interior. Now that it was closer, their equipment could penetrate deeper into the hull structure. What they found made Kexlon call the bridge again. "Commander, you need to see this. The inside of that ship it's chaos, sir. Organized chaos." The holographic display showed the Relentless internal structure. It was nothing like a Velthani ship. Where their vessels had elegant biotechnological systems that flowed seamlessly together, the human ship was a maze of pipes, cables, and machinery. Everything seemed to have a backup. And those backups had backups. "They have 3 separate power distribution networks," Kexlon explained. "If one fails, the others automatically take over. Their life support system has 5 redundant oxygen generators. Their navigation computer has manual backup controls." "Manual?" "There are humans stationed throughout the ship who can physically operate systems if the computers fail." "Why would they need all that?" Vrenets asked. "Because they expect things to break," Raxthor realized. "They expect to take damage and keep fighting. This isn't a ship designed to avoid combat. It's a ship designed to survive it." On the display they could see human crew members moving through the corridors, many of them carrying tools and equipment. Some were already working on the scorched section of hull where the plasma bolt had hit, securing the damaged area with metal plates. "Sir," another officer said hesitantly, "the database has identified some of the materials they're using for repairs. One is translated as duct tape. It appears to be adhesive fabric strips. They're using tape to help seal their hull." Raxthor stared at the screen. These humans had crossed interstellar space in a ship held together with metal, welds, and tape. They'd faced weapons fire and laughed it off. And now they were coming aboard his station. He had a feeling this was going to be a very interesting day. Retry DD. The airlock hissed open and Commander Raxthor got his first close look at humans in person. 3 of them walked through the doorway with confident strides, and immediately Raxthor noticed something alarming: they weren't wearing environmental suits. Commander, his security chief whispered urgently through his earpiece. They have no protection. Our atmosphere readings show compounds that are toxic to most carbon-based life forms. Shouldn't we? Wait, Raxthor murmured back, watching carefully. Captain Jake Mitchell stepped forward first, extending his hand in what their cultural database indicated was a human greeting gesture. He was taller than Raxthor had expected, with an athletic build and an easy confidence in his movements. Behind him came a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and short dark hair, Commander Lisa Hayes, according to the manifest. The third human was broader, with strong hands marked by calluses and old burn scars, Lieutenant Tom Bradley, their chief engineer. All three of them had slightly red eyes and were blinking more than seemed normal. Mitchell cleared his throat and smiled that unnerving smile again. Commander Raxthor, it's a pleasure to meet you in person, Mitchell said, his hand still extended. Raxthor carefully reached out and grasped the human's hand, mimicking the gesture he'd seen in their database. The human's grip was firm but not aggressive. His skin was warm, warmer than a Velthani's. The pleasure is ours, Captain Mitchell, Raxthor replied. But I must ask, are you and your crew comfortable? You're not wearing any environmental protection and our atmosphere contains. Oh, we're fine, Mitchell interrupted cheerfully, then coughed slightly. Sorry about the sniffling and the watery eyes. Our medical team analyzed your atmospheric composition before we docked. They said it's about 70% compatible with what we breathe. Close enough for government work, as we say. But the toxins, Raxthor started. Commander Hayes held up a small device that looked like a medical injector. We gave ourselves broad-spectrum adaptation shots before we came over. It's a cocktail of enzymes, antibodies, and cellular enhancers that helps our bodies process unfamiliar atmospheric compounds. We'll be a bit uncomfortable for a few hours while our systems adjust, but then we'll be fine. Lieutenant Bradley wiped his eyes and grinned. It's like having allergies for a bit. Annoying but not dangerous. We've used this stuff on dozens of different worlds. Raxthor exchanged glances with his officers. The humans had voluntarily injected themselves with chemicals that would alter their cellular biology, just to avoid the inconvenience of wearing suits. That spoke to either remarkable medical technology or a casual disregard for safety that bordered on insanity. As they walked through the station corridors toward the diplomatic quarters, Raxthor observed the humans carefully. They moved with their heads constantly turning, taking in every detail of their surroundings. Mitchell asked questions about everything: the station's architecture, the material used in the walls, how long it had been operational. His tone was friendly and genuinely curious, like a child exploring a new playground. But Raxthor noticed their eyes. Those forward-facing predator eyes never stopped moving, never stopped calculating. They noticed the security cameras, the emergency bulkheads, the location of every door and corridor. Hayes's gaze lingered on the defense stations they passed. Bradley studied the power conduits running along the ceiling with professional interest. They were mapping the station, learning its layout, assessing its strengths and weaknesses. And they were doing it while smiling and making pleasant conversation. This is beautiful craftsmanship, Mitchell said, running his hand along a curved wall that had been grown rather than built. Biotechnology, right? Your ships and stations are alive. In a manner of speaking, Raxthor confirmed, pleased despite himself. We cultivate our structures from engineered organisms. They grow into the shapes we need, self-repair minor damage, and adapt to environmental changes. Incredible, Bradley muttered, studying a wall panel closely. The efficiency must be remarkable. No wasted materials, no manufacturing pollution. Just guided growth. They reached the diplomatic hall, a spacious room with a long table surrounded by comfortable seating adapted for various body types. Raxthor had arranged for refreshments to be prepared, though he wasn't sure what humans would find palatable. Mitchell reached into a pack he'd been carrying and pulled out several small containers. We brought gifts, Commander. First contact tradition among humans, we like to share a bit of our culture. He placed several data storage devices on the table. These contain samples of human music, literature, and art. Information about our history and our worlds. Nothing classified or military, of course, just cultural exchange material. Then he pulled out a sealed container and opened it, releasing a rich, aromatic smell that made several Velthani wrinkle their sensory organs in confusion. And this is coffee. It's a beverage that's very important to human culture. Thought you might like to try some. The station's food analysis scanner immediately began beeping warnings. The science officer monitoring it looked alarmed. Commander, that liquid contains high concentrations of alkaloid compounds. Specifically caffeine. It would be mildly toxic to our biology. Mitchell laughed and poured some of the dark liquid into a cup for himself. Yeah, caffeine. Technically a poison, technically a stimulant. Humans have been drinking it for thousands of years. Keeps us alert and focused. Plus it tastes good. He took a long sip and sighed contentedly. Hayes and Bradley poured their own cups and drank deeply, seemingly unconcerned that they were consuming something their host scanners had flagged as toxic. You drink poison? A young Velthani officer blurted out before he could stop himself. We drink lots of things that are technically poisonous, Bradley said with a grin. Alcohol, coffee, certain spices. If it tastes good and doesn't kill us immediately, humans figure it's worth trying. The diplomatic dinner proceeded awkwardly at first. The Velthani had prepared foods they thought might be compatible with human biology, and the humans politely tried everything, even items that clearly didn't agree with their palates. They asked countless questions about Velthani culture, technology, and history, absorbing information like sponges. Then Drenmar, one of the Velthani scientists, made his mistake. Captain Mitchell, Drenmar said in what he thought was a tone of academic curiosity, I've been reviewing the scans of your vessel. Your ship's design seems quite, well, primitive compared to the collective standard vessels. All that metal and manual systems. How do your people maintain such outdated technology? Is it a cultural preference, or do you lack the resources for more modern construction? The room went silent. Raxthor felt his blood chill. He'd been in enough first-contact situations to know when someone had just made a terrible diplomatic error. The humans looked at each other. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication. Mitchell's smile remained on his face, but his eyes changed. They became harder, colder, and Raxthor's ancient evolutionary instincts screamed at him that he was suddenly in the presence of a dangerous predator. Outdated. Mitchell repeated quietly, setting down his cup of coffee with precise, controlled movements. Commander Raxthor, I want to say this with all due respect to you and your people. Our ship isn't primitive. It's proven. Hayes leaned forward, her voice calm but carrying an edge like sharpened steel. Every system on the Relentless has been tested in real combat. Not simulations. Not theoretical scenarios. Actual warfare against enemies that would consider your fleet to be minor obstacles. We're not here because we're exploring some grand new frontier, Mitchell continued. We're here because we've already fought for our space and won it. Every inch of territory that humanity controls, we secured through blood, ingenuity, and refusing to give up even when we were outmatched. Bradley nodded slowly. That ship you scanned? It survived battles against technology that makes your biotechnology look simple. It's been hit by weapons that should have vaporized it. It's been boarded by enemies that should have overwhelmed its crew. And it's still flying because we build things that last, that can be repaired, that don't give up. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Raxthor looked at these three humans, still sitting calmly, still polite, but suddenly radiating a quiet threat that made his survival instincts scream warnings. Mitchell's expression softened slightly, but his eyes remained sharp. I think we need to show you something, Commander. May we access your display systems? I believe it's time you understood exactly who humanity is and what we've faced. Raxthor swallowed hard and nodded. Of course, Captain. Please proceed. He had a sinking feeling he was about to learn something that would change how the Velthani viewed the universe forever. Commander Raxthor's hands trembled slightly as he authorized access to the conference room's main holographic display system. He told himself it was just curiosity, but deep down he knew it was fear. Fear of what he was about to learn. Captain Mitchell stood up from his seat with fluid grace and pulled a small data module from his uniform pocket. He walked to the display console and connected it with practiced ease, as if he'd done this many times before. The holographic projector hummed to life, filling the center of the room with a three-dimensional star map. Thank you for your patience, Commander, Mitchell said, his voice losing its casual tone and becoming more formal. What you're about to see are actual combat logs from humanity's first encounter with something we call the Kresh Swarm. These aren't dramatizations or simulations. This is real footage from our ship's external cameras and internal security systems. He manipulated the display, and the star map zoomed in on a particular region of space. Raxthor leaned forward, studying the area. At first glance, it looked empty, just void and distant stars. Then he realized what he was actually seeing, and his blood went cold. This was the Terran sector, Mitchell continued quietly. Home to 23 different civilizations. Advanced species, some of them older than humanity by thousands of years. 17 billion sentient beings lived here. Lived? Raxthor asked, though he already knew the answer. Lived, Mitchell confirmed. Past tense. The display shifted, showing closer views of the sector. Raxthor saw dead worlds, planets stripped of their atmospheres, their surfaces scraped clean down to bedrock. Space stations hung like broken toys, torn apart and scattered. Debris fields stretched for light years in every direction, the scattered remains of ships, habitats, and entire orbital cities. The Kresh swarm is a machine intelligence, Commander Hayes spoke up, her voice flat and professional, but Raxthor could hear the anger underneath. We don't know who created them originally. Maybe they were a weapon that got out of control. Maybe they were mining machines that evolved beyond their programming. It doesn't really matter anymore. What matters, Lieutenant Bradley added, is what they do. They consume. Organic matter gets broken down for fuel. Metals and minerals get repurposed for construction. They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They just expand, sector by sector, leaving nothing but dead space behind them. Mitchell pulled up timeline data. The Kresh had been expanding for over 200 years before they reached the edge of human territory. We tried to make contact. We tried to communicate. We sent diplomatic ships, scientific vessels, even tried mathematical language patterns. They destroyed every ship we sent without hesitation. The display changed again, showing a beautiful blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. Cities dotted the surface and orbital platforms gleamed in the sunlight. It looked peaceful, prosperous. This was New Vancouver, Mitchell said softly. Population, 800,000. Mining colony, research stations, farming settlements. It was where I grew up, actually. My parents still lived there when the Kresh arrived. The hologram showed 3 massive objects emerging from the darkness at the edge of the system. Raxthor's sensory stalks went rigid with shock. The things were enormous, each one the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons and covered in what looked like constantly shifting metallic surfaces. Kresh dreadnoughts, Hayes explained. Each one carries enough firepower to glass a planet and enough manufacturing capacity to build a new fleet from the debris. The defense fleet moved to intercept. 12 ships, all built in the same rough, heavy style as the Relentless. They looked like toys compared to the approaching dreadnoughts. What followed was carnage. The human ships fought with desperate ferocity, throwing everything they had at the Kresh machines. Missiles streaked across space. Railguns fired solid slugs at incredible velocities. The humans even used nuclear weapons, creating brief suns in the darkness. The Kresh barely slowed down. Raxthor watched in horror as Kresh weapons tore through human ships like they were made of paper. One vessel lost its entire aft section, venting atmosphere and bodies into space. Another took a direct hit to its reactor and simply ceased to exist in a flash of white light. Then something happened that made Raxthor's mind struggle to process what he was seeing. A human ship, its ammunition depleted and its hull breached in a dozen places, turned and accelerated directly toward one of the dreadnoughts. That was the UNS Defiant, Mitchell said, his voice thick with emotion. Captain Rodriguez and her crew. 320 people. When they ran out of ammunition and their reactor was critical, they made a choice. The Defiant struck the Kresh dreadnought at full acceleration. The explosion was visible across the entire system. When the light cleared, the dreadnought was listing, one entire side crushed and mangled. The Defiant was gone. They bought us time, Hayes said. Time for the evacuation ships to get the colonists off New Vancouver. We lost 8 ships that day. 4,000 crew members. But we saved 600,000 civilians. The hologram continued, showing the aftermath. The remaining human ships were battered wrecks, but they kept fighting. Raxthor saw something that confused him. The audio sensors on the human ships were picking up sound from inside the vessels. The crew was singing. Actually singing songs while they repaired damage and returned fire. Why are they singing? Raxthor asked, completely baffled. Mitchell actually smiled, though it was sad. Humans sing when we're scared, Commander. We sing when we're happy. We sing to keep our courage up and to remind ourselves that we're still alive. Old military tradition, keeps morale high even when things look hopeless. But there's a tactical reason too, Bradley added. We discovered something during that first battle. The Kresh use predictive algorithms to anticipate enemy behavior. They're machines, they think in patterns and probabilities. But they can't understand why a species would waste energy making noise that serves no tactical purpose. It confused their targeting systems. Made them 12% less efficient. The display fast-forwarded, showing months and then years of conflict compressed into minutes. Raxthor watched humanity learn and adapt with terrifying speed. They studied captured Kresh technology. They analyzed attack patterns. They built new weapons specifically designed to exploit crush weaknesses. The human fleet grew larger. Their ships became more sophisticated while keeping that same brutal, over-engineered reliability. Most impressively, they started incorporating crush technology into their own systems, turning the enemy's strengths against them. 6 years, Mitchell said. 6 years of constant warfare. We lost millions of people. Entire colonies were evacuated or destroyed. But we learned. We adapted. We became better at fighting them than they were at fighting us. The final sequence showed a massive human fleet, hundreds of ships, engaging crush forces in what looked like a decisive battle. The humans used tactics that made Raxthor's military mind real. They herded the crush into prepared kill zones. They used the crush's own weapons against them through hacked control systems. They coordinated attacks with a precision that suggested they'd learned to think like the machines. The crush fleet broke, turned, and fled into dark space, away from human territory. We didn't just survive the crush, Commander, Mitchell said, turning to face Raxthor directly. We beat them so thoroughly that they changed their expansion pattern to avoid us. We made machines afraid. And every piece of technology we captured, every tactic we learned, every weapon we developed, we kept it all. Because we knew that someday, we'd face something else that wanted to destroy us. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the station's systems. The Velthani officers sat frozen, trying to process what they just witnessed. Then the warning klaxon shattered the silence. Commander. The voice of the tactical officer burst through the intercom, high-pitched with panic. Emergency. Jump gate activation at the sector boundary. Multiple ships emerging. Reading 5 vessels. Carwell Dominion signatures. Every Velthani in the room went rigid with fear. The Carwell Dominion was notorious throughout this region of space. They were aggressive, territorial, and had a standing policy of destroying any vessel they deemed primitive or inferior. Raxthor's mind raced through the implications. The Carwell would see the relentless. They would scan it and deem it primitive. They would attack. And they would almost certainly threaten the Velthani station for harboring such a vessel. He looked at the humans, expecting to see fear or at least concern. Captain Mitchell, Commander Hayes, and Lieutenant Bradley were all looking at each other with expressions that Raxthor could only describe as eager anticipation. Mitchell's smile returned, that predatory smile that showed too many teeth. Well, Mitchell said calmly, almost cheerfully, this should be interesting. The Carwell Dominion warships tore through the fabric of space like predators emerging from darkness. 5 vessels materialized through the jump gate, each one a sleek dagger of polished black metal bristling with weapon ports. They moved into an attack formation with practiced precision, spreading out to create overlapping fields of fire. On the Velthani station, every alarm system screamed warnings simultaneously. Officers scrambled to their posts, their movements quick with panic. The Carwell had a reputation that stretched across dozens of sectors. They were conquerors, slavers, and destroyers who viewed most other species as resources to be exploited or eliminated. Commander Raxthor felt his carefully maintained composure crack. The Carwell had been probing their borders for years, looking for any excuse to invade. They considered the Velthani weak, their biotechnology inferior to Carwell weapons. And now, with a primitive human vessel docked at their station, the Carwell had the justification they needed. A transmission burst across all frequencies, harsh and commanding. The view screen activated, showing the angular face of Warmaster Throck, the Carwell commander. His skin was dark gray, scaled like armor, and his eyes glowed with a faint red luminescence. Attention, unidentified primitive vessel, Throck's voice boomed with arrogant authority. You are in violation of space claimed by the Carwell Dominion. Your pathetic ship is an insult to proper engineering. Surrender immediately for cultural study and dismantling, or we will demonstrate Carwell superiority by atomizing the Velthani station that harbors such inferior technology. Raxthor felt his hopes crumble into dust. This was it. The Carwell had been waiting for this moment. They would destroy the human ship as a demonstration, then use that as a pretext to seize the station and expand their territory. His people couldn't fight 5 Carwell warships. They would lose and thousands would die. He turned to Captain Mitchell, expecting to see fear or at least grim acceptance. Instead, the human captain's face lit up with what could only be described as delight. His eyes sparkled with anticipation, and that unsettling smile spread across his face once more. Commander Raxthor, Mitchell said, his tone almost cheerful, with your permission I'd like to handle this little situation. Captain, you don't understand, Raxthor said urgently. The Carwell will destroy your ship. They'll attack the station. We need to evacuate, we need to. They'll try, Mitchell interrupted gently, placing a reassuring hand on Raxthor's shoulder. The human's grip was firm and steady, showing no trace of fear. Trust me on this one. Before Raxthor could respond, Mitchell tapped his communication device. Relentless, this is Mitchell. Commander Hayes, I'm assuming you're already at battle stations? Hayes's voice came back immediately, crisp and professional. Affirmative, Captain. We went to alert status the moment those KRYL ships appeared. Pattern Delta is loaded and ready. Just say the word. Good. Let's show these folks why humanity doesn't do surrender. Execute on my mark. Mitchell then opened a channel to the KRYL frequency. His smile remained, but his voice took on a harder edge. War Master Throck, this is Captain Jake Mitchell of the United Nations Starship Relentless. Thank you for your generous offer, but we respectfully decline. Our ship isn't for sale, study, or surrender. If you wish to press the issue, you're welcome to try taking it. We'll be happy to teach you why that's a bad idea. The silence that followed lasted perhaps 2 seconds. Then Throck's face twisted with rage. Insolent primitive. You dare refuse the KRL Dominion? Destroy them. Show these fools the price of defiance. All 5 KRYL warships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons erupted in brilliant streams of superheated energy. The barrage was enough to vaporize most ships 3 times over. The weapons' fire streaked across space toward the Relentless like meteors of destruction. Mitchell stood calmly, watching the incoming fire on the tactical display. He began narrating what was about to happen, his voice steady and almost conversational, as if he were describing a sporting event rather than a life-or-death battle. Okay, so here's what's going to happen, he explained to the stunned Velthani officers. The KRYL will target our reactor because that's standard tactics. Kill the power source, kill the ship. Their plasma weapons will punch through our outer armor because that armor is designed to ablate and disperse damage, not deflect it. They'll see hull breaches and atmosphere venting. They'll see our reactor signature spike and destabilize. And they'll think they've won. The plasma barrage struck the Relentless dead center. The impact was devastating. Outer hull plating shattered and flew off in chunks. Atmosphere vented in great frozen clouds that sparkled in the starlight. Internal explosions bloomed across the ship's superstructure. On every Velthani sensor display, the Relentless looked like it was being torn apart. Mitchell continued speaking, utterly unconcerned. That's when they'll learn what humans actually are. On the KRYL flagship, War Master Throck laughed triumphantly. Primitives? Their ship breaks apart like rotten wood. Witness the... He never finished the sentence. The Relentless reactor, which had been showing signs of catastrophic failure, suddenly released a massive electromagnetic pulse. It wasn't an explosion, it was controlled, directed, and absolutely devastating to electronic systems. The pulse expanded outward in a sphere of invisible destruction, washing over all 5 KRYL vessels. Every light on the KRYL ships went dark simultaneously. Computers died. Weapons systems went offline. Navigation failed. Even life support systems flickered and struggled. The KRYL warships went from being apex predators to floating dead metal in the span of 3 seconds. The venting atmosphere? Mitchell continued his narration. That's not damage. That's a chemical compound we call reactant 7. Very specific mixture. When it hits vacuum and gets exposed to energy weapons fire, it does something interesting. The clouds of venting atmosphere suddenly ignited. But this wasn't a normal fire. It produced an intense flash of light across multiple wavelengths, specifically calibrated to blind sensors. Every KRL ship's remaining optical systems were overwhelmed, leaving them effectively deaf and blind. Then the real nightmare began for the KRL. Panels across the Relentless hull, panels that had looked like simple repair patches or structural reinforcement, suddenly slid open with mechanical precision. From hidden bays throughout the ship's superstructure, weapons emerged. Dozens of railgun turrets unfolded like predatory flowers blooming, their magnetic accelerators beginning to hum with building power. We learned from the creche, Lieutenant Bradley said quietly, his voice filled with professional pride. Never show all your weapons. Make them think you're weaker than you are. Then, when they commit to the attack, show them what you really have. The railguns fired. Solid slugs of tungsten carbide composite, each one the size of a human fist, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. They crossed the distance to the KRYL ships in microseconds. The slugs punched through KRYL energy shields like they didn't exist, because kinetic weapons don't care about energy barriers designed to stop plasma and lasers. But the humans weren't trying to destroy the KRYL ships. Each shot was precisely calculated and carefully aimed. Propulsion systems were disabled with surgical strikes. Weapon ports were sealed shut by impacts that crushed metal without penetrating to crew areas. Communication arrays were sheared off cleanly. The entire engagement took less than 3 minutes from start to finish. When the railguns finally stopped firing, all 5 KRYL warships were floating dead in space, powerless and helpless. Their crews were alive and unharmed, but their ships were completely disabled. Captain Mitchell opened a channel to the KRYL flagship. His voice was no longer cheerful. It was hard as steel and cold as deep space. War Master Throck, your ships and crews are intact because we chose to leave them that way. You have 1 hour to restore emergency power and life support. Then you will leave this sector and not return. If you do return, if you threaten this station or its people again, we won't be so gentle next time. Are we clear? There was no response from Throck, just stunned silence. Mitchell turned to Commander Rax Thor, and the Velthani commander finally understood the truth about humanity. These weren't just explorers. They weren't simple travelers who happened to stumble into Velthani space. They were something far more dangerous and far more valuable as friends than as enemies. Commander, Mitchell said, his voice returning to that gentle, calm tone, I want you to understand something about humans. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy. We're not the smartest. We're not the oldest or the most advanced. Our ships aren't the fastest and our weapons aren't the most powerful. He gestured toward the disabled KRYL vessels drifting helplessly in space. But we're the species that learns from everything that tries to kill us. Every enemy we face we study. Every weapon used against us, we analyze and improve upon. Every tactic that works against us gets countered and turned around. We adapt faster than anyone else because we have to. Because we refuse to be victims. Commander Hayes stepped forward. We don't start fights, Commander. We don't conquer for the sake of conquest. But we finish fights. And we make absolutely certain that anyone who threatens us or our allies regrets that decision. Lieutenant Bradley nodded. That ship you scanned? It's not primitive. It's practical. Every system has been proven in combat. Every backup has a backup. We build things that work, that last, that can be repaired in the middle of a battle. Because pretty technology doesn't matter if it can't survive first contact with reality. Mitchell extended his hand toward Rax Thor, that human gesture of respect and friendship. The United Nations would like to offer the Velthani Empire a formal alliance. Mutual defense, open trade routes, cultural and technological exchange. We share what we know. We protect each other. We explore this galaxy together. What do you say, Commander? Rax Thor looked at Mitchell's extended hand. He looked at the relentless, battered but unbroken, already beginning repairs. He looked at the KRYL warships, defeated so completely they would think twice before threatening anyone in this sector again. He reached out and grasped the human's hand firmly. We accept, Captain Mitchell. Most gratefully and with great relief that you're offering friendship rather than demanding surrender. Mitchell's smile softened into something genuine and warm. That's what humans do, Commander. We make friends. And we protect those friends with everything we have. 3 days later, as the Relentless prepared to depart, Commander Rax Thor made an official entry in the Velthani Imperial database. It would be distributed to every Velthani station, every ship, and every diplomatic office. Species, human. Origin, planet Earth, Sol system. Status, allied. Approach with respect and openness. They are curious, friendly, and genuinely interested in peaceful cooperation. They will honor agreements and treat allies with loyalty. However, never mistake their friendliness for weakness. Never threaten them or their allies. They are the most adaptable and resourceful warriors in known space. They turn every defeat into a lesson and every enemy's weapon into their own tool. Recommended status: friend at all costs. Enemy never.